All right, gang. Might want to put your seatbelt on, kids. This is an e-ticket ride. And if you're old enough to know what I'm saying, you are in the right place. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's John. I'm an alcoholic. I guess we'll dispense with the preliminaries. My sobriety date is October 28th, 2009, for those of you who are Catholically inclined. And I did not find this out until I was 7 years sober. For those of you who are Catholically inclined, that is the feast of St. Jude Thaddeus, who is the patron saint of hopeless causes. I'm also terribly devoted to the mother of St. Augustine, one of the world's most famous alcoholics and womanizers. Her name was St. Monica, who is the patron saint of alcoholics and troubled mothers. And trust me, people, we are some troubled mothers sometimes. Before we get in here, I'll try to keep the mess to a minimum, the message to a maximum. When I was over here, I prayed for three things. First of all, just be honest, because my best material, I promised Louis, I sent him a text, I said, I'm going to give you my best material. He calls me up and goes, what the hell does that mean? I was like, maybe I'll just get up here and tell the truth. So that was prayer number one. Prayer number two was to be right here, right now, because I love to future trip. It's my favorite Olympic sport other than renovating my past. I know none of you can relate to any of that bullshit. And, my third prayer was to hold some space so that we can do in this meeting what this program is all about, which is basically one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. So from one alcoholic to another, let me get some silly, dumb disclaimers out of the way. First off, I am one of those people mentioned in Chapter 5 with serious mental and emotional problems. I got this program despite being bipolar. A diagnosis which I did not receive until I was 41 years old and 5 months sober, and told my sponsor point blank, either I'm putting a gun in my mouth, which I already had earlier that day, but I did not pull the trigger, or I'm going to drink. My head is very loud. That's disclaimer number two. I can live with it now, and I have ways of coping with it now. The steps gave me some of that. Outside help did the rest. But I can live with my head. A lot of people like to say that our best thinking got us here. I disagree with that proposition. Defective thinking got me here. Very defective thinking that exists in a very, very small part of my brain, which is extremely loud, utterly obnoxious, totally immune to facts, and always wants his own way. I named him Cartman for that reason. And Cartman just likes to roll up all the time and go, well, fuck this fucking shit. I just want it my way, the highway. You are not respecting my authority, blah, 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 blah. And this is me calm, kids. So just remember that. Now, for those of you who don't know me from my early years, but Danny does, he can tell you I vibrated at a very, very, very different frequency several years ago. Very different. And I have a lot of very skilled clinicians to thank for the fact that I vibrated a different one. I also have had 3 awesome sponsors. I do have one now. He has a sponsor too. I work a program. I sponsor 2 men in this program. And those 2 knuckleheads save my life about every other day because they're calling me with some new and interesting thing that they've blown up in their lives. And I know because I'm really good at blowing shit up. Self-destruction was an Olympic sport for me. Always has been, always will be. My hand is always... The way it used to be when I first got in here is my hand was always down on the button. Then a few years later, my hand came off the button, but the plastic shield was never rolled down. Now there's a plastic shield and a 2-key verification system, sort of like a nuclear code. I stay away from that thing as much as possible because fucking up, I understand. Being okay with okay and living where 95% of the population lives, I have no skills in that department unless I have conscious contact with higher power. I work this program every single day and I work it hard because if I didn't, I would be insufferable. And that's the kindest word I have. I would lay waste to everyone and everything in my path. I'll give you a sample of my day. Today I show up, my graduate program, where I am told when I walk through the door to step 6 feet back because I'm supposed to take a test for COVID and turn up negative so I can walk down the hall to swab my fucking nose and take another COVID test. Now, the average person might flip their shit at this proposition, and I was this close to taking that woman's head straight off her shoulders. And then I realized, 1, she has nothing to do with this. 2, a 53-year-old having a temper tantrum is an ugly sight. It's just pathetic, if you want to know the truth. And 3, there's a better way to deal with this than the way I always dealt with shit. This is the first lesson I learned in AA. What I do as a default doesn't work. If it did, I wouldn't be here. Let's get real about one thing, gentlemen. We need to be real about this. If we could figure this stuff out, and alcoholics, and I know I work with alcoholics. Alcoholics and drug addicts are some of the smartest, most talented, most interesting, most fascinating human beings you will ever meet. I have never met a total dumb fuck in these rooms. Now, I've heard people talk about doing some dumb bleeping stuff here, and I am certainly one of them. But I've never met someone who's just like, "Grr," and believe me, I also work as a teacher, and let me tell you, the smart ones and the dumb ones, we know right away. I don't have to wait for people to open their mouth. Most of the time, I'm like, "Oh, Lord." And, "Oh, Lord." So it just works that way, okay? Teachers made similar judgments about me, and then I opened my mouth, and then they changed their minds real quick. So, what I do want to make clear, though, is if any one of us was sufficient to the task of getting ourselves sober, we wouldn't need a book. We wouldn't need steps, we wouldn't need a program, we wouldn't need principles, we wouldn't need spirituality, we wouldn't need a higher power, and we wouldn't need each other. We just go skipping down the merry way and figuring this shit out on our own. Nobody walks into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because your life is great and everything is orgasms and unicorns and fairy dust. No, we come in here because there's nowhere left to go most of the time. We're done. Where is there left to go? You know, for me, it was either I was going to get institutionalized because I was going to have that one manic bounce that took me to psychotic land, and I just fucking stay there like many people in my family have chosen to do. 2, drink myself to death, a very, very popular career path on both sides of my family. By the way, not why I'm an alcoholic. 3, I could just be in jail for one of the many felonies I've committed. So I didn't have a lot of choices when I came here. I came here, I had no soul. And I mean that sincerely, people. I couldn't look in a mirror. The thing that looked back at me was not human. It was more akin to Gollum, except I didn't have a ring and I didn't say my precious all the time. I was too high for that, or too loaded, or both. Somebody asked me at Los Encinas once, my dear Dr. Singh was like, "Tell me, what is loaded for you?" I said, "Total sensory deprivation and backup drugs. I want to be blacked out, and I want to be blacked out to the fact that I'm blacked out." And I succeeded at that for 31 years. So that's the end of my drunkalogue. Okay? You all know how this ends. I take exception to a couple phrases in our book. Sorry, I have to say this. Only because I find them slightly ironic. 1, having had a spiritual experience. Honey, I'm an addict. You think one's going to do it? One of anything is ever going to do it? My drug of choice is more to begin with, and has been since the sperm hit the egg. I was a defiant little thing before I was born. It's like my mother said, "Oh no, you couldn't wait 9 months. You had to roll out 2 months premature." My parents were always telling me I was a willful child. I did not listen to anyone or anything. You know, I had to come in here 40-something years later after burning it all down to actually go, "Hey, that guy knows something I don't, because he didn't take a drink today. Maybe I might want to listen to this one." And then I found a whole room full of people who hadn't done it. And I was like, maybe something they do is something I should do. It was this weird thing. So I've had a lot of spiritual experiences, and most of them take place in the context of encountering you guys. In fact, that's where most all of them have taken place. They also take place outside these rooms each and every time I choose to be kind and loving, which I did today with that poor woman who was just like, "I'm sorry, honey, you can't come in here without a negative COVID test." Now, you have to imagine this did not sit with my logical side of my brain. I'm like, so wait a minute, I have to pass a COVID test to take a COVID test. I said, "You kind of understand this makes no sense." She goes, "I know, honey, but that's what the sign says." Okay. So I went down, took a little 15-minute PCR test, came back up, and shoved another wad up my nose. That was really exciting. But here's the thing, a simple tiny thing like that would have set me off for hours. Hours. I would have flipped my shit. You know, I worked as an ocean lifeguard, people. I lost count of the number of idiots that I yanked out after telling them, "Don't go up, too late, you're out. Now I gotta go swim after you, now I have to bring you back, now I have to do CPR on your dead ass and hope you come back." Some of them did, most of them didn't. That's just how it works, okay? And almost every single one, and this, trust me guys, you'll relate to this. Half the people I swam out to literally looked at me with a completely straight face while drowning and said, "I've got this, I'm fine." If that ain't a metaphor for an alcoholic, I don't know what is. We can be dying. Case in point, my cousin came in off a bender. We convinced him to go to a hospital. This was last Christmas. Convinced the boy to go to a hospital. He's been in and out for 30 years. He's starting to show signs of wet brain. He's blown his liver out more times. I mean, I don't know how his body is still functioning, to be honest. 3 days into his hospitalization, he woke up. He ripped all the IV tubes out of his body. He stumbled out into a buffalo winter. Okay, for those of you who are familiar with a buffalo winter, that's a high of 18 degrees on a good day, with no shoes, a hospital gown, and a parka, and went on a bender for 2 more fucking weeks. We didn't even know where, we couldn't even find him. This is what alcoholism looks like, people. This is what it does to us. And you know what? My cousin Keith is a beautiful human being. He really is. He's one of my favorite human beings in the world. I love him more than life itself. And yet nothing I say or do, nothing anybody says or does can get that boy sober, because he doesn't want to get sober. He prefers the path of destruction to what we have in these rooms. I can't fix that. My own father is taking the slow road. Oh, it is painful to watch. He's 81 years old, alcoholic cardiomyopathy. I just went back over Christmas to take care of him. He had a heart surgery, non-invasive procedure. And then they gave him something called Plavix, and he started bleeding horribly, I won't say from where, and decided to wait, as you know, all good alcoholics do, for 72 hours before he decided he might need to go to the hospital. I don't know about you, but when I start bleeding out of holes that aren't supposed to bleed and I'm not a woman, that's a sign. You need a physician, not to my dad. He called me from the hospital. And the thing, the thing I realize, I try to have a sense of humor about this, because without this program, I couldn't be present to my dad to take care of him. My father will not get sober. My father's heart is falling apart. It has a 2-inch aneurysm in it. A bubble that's going to pop, who knows when, but it's going to pop. He just had an aneurysm repaired 4 years ago. He doesn't want to change his diet. He does not want to stop drinking. And I am powerless. I am powerless over that. I just spent a week with him. And one of the things I learned is I'm like, well, I have to accept the situation as it is, just like people did with me. People told me for years, my first inkling I had a problem, I was 16. My guidance counselor, I came in and told her all this shit about my alcoholic family, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, honey, you need Al-Anon. 2 weeks later, I was so drunk I could barely walk. And I fell and face planted in her office. And she's like, oh, honey, you need AA. Now, like any good alcoholic, I waited 25 years and marched promptly into these rooms at the age of 41. Imagine the destruction I could have saved myself. This is who we are, people, if we don't have a program. Restless, irritable, discontent, rage-filled, terrified, infant, non-human, children, subhuman messes. I have a lot of experience with all of those things. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I came into this room, I had no soul. My body had, my soul had checked out. My body was waiting for the memo. I was about, 6 months in when my sponsor grabbed me, physically hauled me into the men's room. I'm like, dude, what is this? He sticks me in front of a mirror and he goes, look. And for the first time in years, I could see a sparkle in my eyes. I'd almost rejoined the human race. I started laughing again. The gifts of sobriety for me have nothing to do with shinies, money, people, or stuff. It has to do with when I wake up in the morning, am I reasonably comfortable in my skin, and can I be useful to other human beings? My first defense against a drink when I got here was, don't drink or use no matter what. It's the only thing I had in my tool belt. It's not so scary when you're new. A few months, years down the road, that's a terrifying thought. Now, and this may sound kooky to some of you, and it may make sense to some of you, my first defense against a drink is do the loving and kind thing for somebody else. Stop thinking about me all the time. And that can be hard to do. I have a very loud head. If you'd like a description, here's the best metaphor I have. Imagine the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. It's about 400 people strong. Now imagine if the Mormon Tabernacle Choir were made up of baboons who mainline meth all day long. It's screaming, shouting, yelling, pandemonium and chaos 100% of the time. The committee is never out of session for me. I'm very aware of what's going on up here. What I have learned, thanks to this program and some pretty good outside help, I gotta say, is that I don't listen to that defective part of my brain. It's never been right about anything. I learned that. I figured that out. It's like this part of my brain that tells me, oh, you're a piece of shit, you're stupid, you're never gonna amount to anything. I know none of you can relate to this, so I'll keep sharing. Okay. I don't have to listen to him anymore. And most importantly, I don't have to listen to the quietest voice in my head that has told me consistently that I am not an alcoholic, my bottom wasn't that low and I can drink like a gentleman. It's not true. I know it's not true. What this program has given me is peace of mind. I have a form of serenity. It works for me. I'm not recommending it for you, but it works for me. Okay? I have a way of working this program. It works for me, imperfect though it may be, because I'm human. But to the best of my ability, I do a few simple things every day that starts with conscious contact with a higher power, ends with conscious contact with a higher power. And if I do those things and work my program and do my 10-step at night and do all the things that have been suggested, I have a chance of being useful to human beings outside of this room, which, as I've been led to understand, is the whole point of this exercise to begin with. I came here with no choices. I have choices now. I came here with no future. I have a future now. I came here and able to relate. I can relate now. I like people now. I like you guys. Weirdly enough, I kind of sort of almost like me, which allows me to like you in return. And if I can't like you, then I will love you and respect you. And when the shit gets real, I will pull my hand out, I will pick you up, I will brush the dust off, and I will help you make it better. I'm not just gonna tell you it's gonna get better. I will do what it takes to help you get there. Man, is that a different way to live. I like it. I hope you got something from this ramble. This is about as organized as my head gets. I do wanna say thank you, Louis, for asking me to do this. I want to say thank you to all the boys in the back, my Thursday night Sausage Fest crew back there.
Whoa.
That takes real good care of me. Don't get it twisted. I love you too. Calm down. Okay. And I'll leave you with this last thought, just because. The other thing I have exception with in the book. What is the deal with pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization? I'm sorry. Is there another brand like fun and uplifting? Because I haven't met it yet. Thanks for letting me share.